And welcome to the Business Spotlight. I'm Pat Dewar. Today we are talking about family law. You know, the divorce rate in America is soaring, and that causes so many issues when it comes to, well, everything. If you have kids, if you have a property, if you have so many different ways that you can create pain, so to speak, and at that time you need an attorney. You need somebody that can help you in that environment. So today we've got Jeffrey Stewart of Galloway and Gilliland in Southlake, serving the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We're talking about family law. And one of the things that's kind of interesting about Jeffrey is that he was, he graduated TCU, went to what used to be Texas Wesleyan's law school, which is now A&M, but he's been a rising star since he literally became a lawyer. In the last few years, he's been on several different publications and recognized in the community as somebody that is maybe a contender. Jeff, thanks so much for being on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Pat. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I really want to get into your story. You're a rising star, but obviously there's a lot to that. There's, something created that in you, that burning desire to really excel that way, especially in law. Tell me about your story. How'd you get there?
Well, I graduated from TCU in about 2005, and I took 2 years off. I was a poli-sci major, and there's not a lot you can do with a poli-sci major besides go to law school, but I went and worked for an insurance company for a little while, did that for about 2 years, and realized that it really just wasn't for me, and I wanted to go back to school. So I ended up going to Texas Wesleyan because I was from Fort Worth and wanted to stay in the area, and at that time I didn't feel like going off. And so I stayed and went to Texas A&M, or Texas Wesleyan, which is now Texas A&M School of Law. And I'm glad I did. I really enjoyed the program that they offered. All their professors had a great open door policy, and it was an environment they really wanted you to learn, and they gave you the opportunities to go out and experience what practicing law was. And at the time, I always said I never wanted to practice family law. That was the one thing that was on my list that I did not want to do. When I graduated in 2008, it was, the economy, we were in the Great Recession at that time, and trying to get a job coming out of law school with no experience in the legal field, it was difficult. And what I fell into was family law. So I like to say that family law more found me than I found family law. And so I got into doing some divorce cases and found out I really just liked it.
Really?
And I did. And, it was an opportunity to help people. And the other thing about it is with family law, it's not the same thing every day. When I wanted to be a real estate lawyer, and I wanted to, do leases and draft land contracts and draft deeds, and that's the same thing over and over and over. And with family law, there's that variety that you get. Every family is different. Every family has different goals. Every family has different needs, and you get to adapt yourself to an ever-changing situation. Really get in there, take a look at what's going on with this family, and say, how can I help this particular family get through this time?
And when you work with folks, a lot of times it's, well, tell me about that process. I mean, when somebody comes to you, do you tend to attract either side, or is it just everybody, or how does that work?
I deal with all different kinds of people. I deal with people from lower economic brackets. I deal with people from high-end economic brackets. I deal with the husband. I deal with the wife. I deal with the father. I deal with the mother. And sometimes I get to deal with just the children. So it really just depends on what client contacts me that day. And I like having that variety in the client. I don't want to get known in the community as I only represent this type of person.
What's created so much success for you then? Because you've been recognized as a rising star in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
I think it's most of the recognitions that we attorneys get are peer recognitions. And so it's recognition from my fellow attorneys, judges, and other members of the legal community that have come out and said, this is a good attorney, we respect what he's doing in the legal community. And so that to me makes it more special. And it's really just, with the family law community, unlike different areas of law, we as family law attorneys want to help people. It's not as contentious as it is, and there's never always a right or wrong answer. And it's really, for what I consider the good family law attorneys, it's not we're going to go to court and battle this out. It's we're going to all sit down, put our heads together, and figure out what we're going to do to help both sides reach their goals. Now, I'm still advocating for my client, and I'm still there to represent my client and help my client reach their personal goals. But I'm also there to help educate my client through the process, help them go through the process, and help them understand why their spouse, who they feel they're contentious with at this time, wants what they're wanting, so that they can understand how that's also going to benefit their children too.
So it really is more than maybe it used to be. It seemed like years ago, I went through a divorce, and it was like she got the kids and she got the money, and that was the end of it. And I was like, really? It sounded like I didn't even get a say in this.
And that really, I think, is the family law of the past. And there are still a lot of older attorneys out there that will still have that mentality of, let's just go to the courthouse and try this case. Well, we have a judge, we can ask for a jury, and juries can answer a very few number of questions in family law. Mostly your judge is going to determine what's going to happen, but that's not always beneficial for people. You have to think of it as, if I'm going to the court, it's because we're going to that judge and we're telling that judge, we're all adults here, we have some problems, but we can't figure out how to work them out on our own. And what happens is that judge is there to solve your problem. They will give you a solution to that problem, but you're going to be in front of that person for a matter of hours. You're going to be limited in what you can say, because we have rules of court that limit what evidence can be presented and how it can be presented. And after a few hours, maybe a day, maybe 2 days, this person that you've just met is going to tell you how your family is going to move forward through this difficult process. And my approach, and I think most young lawyers, our approach, and what family law has really turned into, is a more collaborative process of, we need to sit down and work out what we're going to do here, because the clients know what their family needs. You as a father know what's best for your children. You as a mother know what's best for your children. They may not be the same views, but you're at least going to have a lot more flexibility than what a judge is going to do.
Do you get many cases that are emotion-packed? I mean, full of vim and vigor and everything else that they can throw at the other side?
Sometimes. I would say that most people aren't like that.
Good.
Really, the most difficult cases for me are young kids. If you have if 21 or 22-year-old, they got married and now they want to get divorced, they don't have that life experience yet to really evaluate, is it worth fighting over this, or is this something that I can just let go and deal with? The other difficult cases is when you have somebody that wants to move. In Texas courts, we have a strong policy that if both parents want to be parents, we're going to let them be parents. And we're going to let them be involved with their children, because it is in the best interest of the children to have both of their parents be involved in their lives and raise them. And hopefully they're going to have a good co-parenting relationship after they get through the difficult divorce process. So I think it's really important that people do that, but the difficult clients are the ones that don't want to work together. And those people are out there, but they're few and far between.
That's good. It's good to hear that, in a sense, people are growing up. I have to admit, with the divorce rate where it is, I imagine that the idea of it never happening to you is less common.
Well, it is, but no one goes into a marriage thinking, I'm going to get divorced one
Correct.
day. And so for every person that comes into my office wanting a divorce, this is not something that they plan to do. And so it's my job to let them come in, and most people really just want somebody to tell their story to. And so I let them tell me their story. We figure out what they want to achieve at the end of this, and then we try to put a plan together, because it's not just going through the motions anymore. You don't have to run down and have a hearing. We don't have to go immediately set rules in place, set child support, set visitation schedules, because if parents are getting along, I don't want to take them into a courtroom and have them say something that's inevitably going to anger the other side, and where my clients are right here where we can get to an agreement, someone's going to say something and it's not going to, and it's going to push them apart, and now we've got to get back to here, because the ultimate goal is to get to that settlement.
So there are ways to essentially create agreements that the court will then acknowledge, and so you don't have to go sometimes to sit in front of somebody and kind of iron out all the details?
That's correct. Most of my cases are settled either at or before a mediation. Courts are overloaded, and that's not just in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Tarrant County is overloaded, Collin County is overloaded, Dallas County is overloaded, Denton County is overloaded. And so the courts want you to settle. And pretty much every court is going to have a local rule that says before you can have a trial on this, you have to go to mediation. And so they're going to make you try to settle it, because the court does not have the time or the resources to hear every case.
Wow. So So what are some examples of things where you've done something a little different than maybe some of the other attorneys? Some examples of cases that you've been a part of or results that you've been able to help create that, that worked out favorably?
I think really what's important and what a lot of people don't do is that when you're talking to your client knows their spouse. They know them better than anybody else in the world. And so it's really important to get an understanding of what they've been living, why they are where they are, and how their spouse is going to react to certain actions that you take. And so what you really need to do is come up with a plan where you're not going to offend the other party or the other side, because we know what the hot buttons are, and the instinct is sometimes to push those hot buttons, and we don't want to do that.
All I can think is just how many times, I mean, I've been to court a lot and in years past, and that sounds bad, but it's not. It was just, you know, there were things that we had to fight for. Now, do you encourage the men to, and it's to me, it was, I was fighting for my rights as a father, okay? Is that something that the courts, in a sense, appreciate when a father is trying to fight for his rights?
Well, in Texas, the court's not going to take away your rights. It is very hard to take away a father's rights, and what a lot of people, there's a lot of misconceptions about what's going on in a divorce process and what a court's going to do. If you want to be a dad, the court is going to let you be a dad. And if you want to be a mother, the court's going to let you be a mother. And so what people are really fighting over, sadly, I think is more often the child support than it is the custody or the visitation. And a lot of times when you get into these aggressive court battles, it's more over the money than it is about the kids, because I think most people can recognize we don't want our kids in the middle of this, and we don't want to pit our kids in the middle of this. And when you have those types of cases, you're going to have a lot of hearings. And the judge in that case, the judges in Tarrant County and Dallas County really do a good job of trying to curb that and put some other protections in place. And you know, they will appoint an attorney for the children. They will get some family court services involved, get other third parties in there to really figure out what's going on. And because the judge at the end of the day wants to help this family too. And if you're going to have one of those cases like you're discussing where it is contentious, you're headed down that path where the judge is going to be the one that's making that decision.
Right.
And so the judge is going to want to hear something more than the he said, she said.
Well, and when that comes up, when things that when you're like in the developmental stage of the story, okay, what are things that maybe you've implemented that's helped to bring people back off of their emotional roller coaster down to think straight, think right, let's get, in a sense, let's get along in this playpen?
Well, what I like to tell my clients is, you know, at the end of the day, when you're going through a divorce, a divorce is really two cases. You've got your child custody case and you've got your property division. And if you don't have children, obviously we're just doing a property division. And so at the end of the day, what a divorce boils down to is really it's a business decision. And you have to be able to make a business decision like a business person. And when business people make decisions, you have to take a lot of emotion out of it. And so what I tell my clients is you really have to try to take a look at this on the property side and really say, I'm a business person looking to figure out how what my life is going to look like after this divorce, and I have to think like that. Now, telling somebody to take emotion out of it, them actually being able to do that are two different things, because they can't. And I understand that you're not going to be able to do this. You may really dislike this person right now for whatever particular reason, but they're still the father of your children, they're still the mother of your children, and you've lived with this person for many, many years, and deep down you're still always going to have feelings for this person.
Right.
And so you can't always put that emotion aside. And so what my job is to tell you what that business decision looks like. Now, the client ultimately makes the decision of what it is that they're going to do, but my job is there to help them look at both sides and then figure out how we can reach a happy medium.
Wow.
And with the kids side, you know, what I tell people is sometimes you want to try to appease the other party for the same reasons, because you still have that emotional connection to the other party that you're always going to have, but you have to look at it as, I'm dad. What does dad do that's the best thing for his kids? And sometimes what dad would do to protect his children, or what mom would do to protect her children, is not what's best for the other spouse so that you can keep them happy. Sometimes you cannot keep everybody happy in this process.
Well, and aren't there even the state has certain guidelines for how much a parent should be able to see their child? I mean, is that the case?
Well, under the law, there are presumptions built into the law. In Texas, we have a standard possession order that is the default schedule that you get most of the time if you're going to go to court. One parent's going to be the primary parent, and the other person's going to get the possession schedule. And most people that live in Texas know what that is. It's the first, third, and fifth weekends from 6 p.m. Friday to 6 p.m. on Sunday, Thursday from 6 to 8, and then alternating holidays and weekends. But the good thing is with mediation and with settlement, you can do whatever you want to do with the possession schedule. You don't have to follow those guidelines. You can do what you want to do for and what is going to work for your family. Because a cookie cutter schedule doesn't work for everybody. You have firemen that work 3 on, 3 off. You have nurses that work 12-hour shifts. You have people that work weekends, evenings, people in the food service industry. Not everyone has that perfect 8 to 5 Monday through Friday schedule that fits that cookie cutter schedule. And so there has to be some give and take, because we want the children to be able to spend both times with the parents. And even the court is going to recognize that, and they try to adopt a schedule that's going to be beneficial for both parents.
Interesting. Who's your, I want to say who's your ideal client, but if you were to sit there and kind of sum it up into who you really love working with, who would that be?
Really, I don't think that there is an ideal client for me. I think that the clients find you, because your client, what I like to tell my clients is, when I conclude an interview is, if you didn't like me, that's fine. I don't want you to work with somebody that you don't work, because it's very important. You're going through something very personal, very difficult, and the most important thing for the client is that they can connect and feel comfortable with their attorney. Because if you can't talk to your attorney, nothing is going to work, because you have to be able to effectively communicate what your goals are, what you want, and why you feel the way you do, because without that information, I can't help you.
Wow. One of the things that I hear in what you're saying, and tell me if I'm reading right, if we're hearing you right, is that you really try to get into not just the mind of the client, but the mind of their ex or to-be ex-spouse, and understand, okay, from both parties, what's the best outcome with the client that you're working with's intention, or am I misreading something?
Well, really, it is, I have to know what my client's goal is and what they want. And then we have to really take a look at that and say, is this realistic? Is this something that you're going to be able to accomplish? Because sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And so you have to know what the other side's going to think, because if I know for a fact that the husband has already dug his heels in the ground and says, I'm absolutely not going to ever agree to sell this house, and I want to keep it, and I'm not going to agree to anything, any sort of agreement that where I don't have this house, then okay, we need to, if we're going to settle this case without going to trial because they've taken that hard of a position, we need to look at options. And so, you know, we do want to know what the other side's thinking, and we want to know what's realistic. And if my client also takes the same position of, I'm not giving up the house and I don't want to sell it, we only have to go to court, then we have to go to court.
Right.
And the judge is going to have to make that decision. But at the end of the day, I still want to promote the settlement. We're going to have that conversation, because nothing good comes out of going to court.
People usually connect to you how?
I think it's, I've been told from clients in the past that they really appreciate my candor with them, because I don't like to sugarcoat things. I'm going to tell you it is what it is, and this is what we're dealing with, and I'm not going to come in and tell you, oh, just because you want that, you're going to get this, because there is no guarantee in family law. And the other thing that I think every client needs to know is there is no winning. No one wins in a child custody case. It's trying to come out as unscathed as we can and keep our children as far removed from it as we possibly can. Because it's, at the end of the day, the court standard is what's best for these kids, and that's what we want to try to manage that case by, and make sure that everyone tries to stick to that goal, because we really want to protect the kids when we can. Interesting.
And so but if somebody found you, would they find you on the internet? Would they find you via referrals, the TV show? How might somebody connect to you once they've gotten a feel for what you're like?
Our phone number, anyone can just give our office a call. I'm happy to sit down and talk to anybody. If I'm not available, they can speak with my assistant and set up a time for us to talk. And I just think it's really important that you do always meet your attorney face to face.
Right.
It's dangerous for you to try to set up that relationship over a telephone call. Sometimes you have to. I've got clients that I represent that live in other states, and they can't come to my office, and we can't find somewhere to meet that's convenient so that we can sit down and meet face to face. Because again, the most important thing for that client is, are you comfortable with me?
Right. Well, and now there's so much technology available today that, to create, in a sense, a digital face-to-face with FaceTime or whatever, those type of products. But when you're looking at, someone calls you, they sit down with you, or they get you on the phone at least if they're out of state, are there many cases that you're working with or you've worked with that are out of state?
I've done 3 or 4 of them in the last year or so, and a lot of the times it really comes up in more child support issues, or you have an order where they were divorced out of state and they've now one parent has now moved to Texas, or both parents have moved to Texas but they're in different spots. So it does arise where I do have clients that do not live in the area, and we have to adapt to that situation and obviously work with their schedule and work with the court schedule to try to make sure that we can get those things, but we're still trying to get everything settled.
Right. Are there many differences between the states and their kind of laws defining kids and stuff?
Every state's different. Every state's going to have a different way that they approach child support. Everywhere's going to have a different way that they do possession schedules. And, what I find a lot of times is that people get their family law knowledge from TV, which they start using these terms like sole custody, and they don't understand that that's not a term we use in Texas. That's a California term that they use on all the TV shows.
Oh.
And so, part of the initial consultation is getting them in there saying, okay, those aren't the terms we use, here's what the actual terms are, and explaining how that's different from the perceptions that most people have from TV.
Yeah, but it sounds like you do a lot of education with your clients. Is that the case?
I think that's the most important thing that we do as attorneys, is because we do this every day. And so someone coming in and trying to do this and where we're seeing the big problem, the big rise of it is with the Supreme Court. They issued these family law forms and basically are trying to tell people, if you don't want to hire an attorney, here's a form, fill it out, and try doing your own divorce. The problem with that is if you don't know family law and you don't know what you're doing and you check the wrong box, you can't undo it and go back and fix it later. And so it's very, very dangerous. And so anyone that is trying to go through a divorce without attorneys, or one side has an attorney and the other side is given the paperwork and we've reached an agreement, we're trying to keep the costs down, and so they send over a final order and they read it and say, oh, to me this looks like it says everything that the agreement's supposed to say. I guarantee you it does not. And so it's very, very important that even if you don't want full representation from a family law attorney, because you think if I hire an attorney, it's all of a sudden going to turn into a big battle, you can just hire an attorney to read your paperwork and make sure and go through it with you to make sure that final agreement says what it's supposed to, and that a lot of the standard protections that we put into a family law agreement are there and they haven't been removed by that other attorney that's representing your spouse zealously.
Wow. So they call you at the phone number on the screen in Southlake, but you cover all of the Dallas-Fort Worth area and beyond.
Yeah, we primarily practice in Tarrant County, Dallas County, Denton County, and Collin County, but we will go to the surrounding counties as well.
Really? So I'm trying to think about when it comes to you guys, what do you think is a little different about Galloway and Gillard?
I think that what we're really trying to do is focus on the ever-changing family in our firm. Marriage is not what marriage was 20, 30 years ago. My grandparents' marriage is not what people are getting married today. People aren't getting married at 18, 19 with no assets and starting a life together. People are getting married in their 30s and their 40s where they have assets and they have businesses and they have cars, houses. They've started a life on their own and they're joining up with a partner later in life. And so I think it's really important for those people, and also for people that have gone through a divorce and they have found another spouse, and we're having these blended families come together, that you have assets, your new spouse has assets, you have kids, they have kids. It's real important to speak to a family lawyer at that time, because we're not just there to do divorces and help you through the bad times. We're also there to help you prepare for what could happen in the future. And I think it's very important for anybody that's getting married that has a house, has retirement plans, has a business, to speak to an attorney and think about a prenuptial agreement before you get married, because prenuptial agreements aren't really just for the rich and famous anymore. Everybody can have a prenuptial agreement. The purpose of the prenuptial agreement is to avoid that dispute in the future. We can't talk about kids in a prenuptial agreement, obviously, because we don't have kids at this point, and we're going to figure out what's in the best interest of them at that time of a divorce. But we can handle all this property issues, which I find are more of the contentious property issues, because in Texas we're a community property state. And so the court's there to divide the community property, but they're also there to confirm your separate property, which is the property that you had before you got married. And so if you have these assets before you get married, put the paperwork together so that we don't have to fight about what that was down the road. And if you get divorced 20 or 30 years later, you're not going to have the documents or remember what you had 20 or 30 years ago. So put the paperwork together and think of it more of just an insurance policy that you hope you never have to use.
Interesting that you would put it in terms of insurance policy. I agree with the insurance the idea of it being an insurance, because I imagine that a lot of people are almost afraid of the idea because it says, well, we're preparing for divorce.
Right. I think that that's an antiquated thought, and you shouldn't have that, because you should both be. And most people that are going to have assets are going to be educated. They're going to have lived these life lessons, and they're going to know we're not really planning for a divorce. We're just planning, while we are still cordial with each other, of if this were to happen, I want to make sure you're taken care of and I'm taken care of, and we've just dealt with this issue, because we don't want to spend a bunch of money down the road fighting over something that we already know we don't want to do.
Interesting. If you were to think about, in the last few minutes here, I want to talk about people need to contact you. Who should be connecting with you right now?
People thinking about getting married, or anybody that's thinking about a divorce, or anybody that's thinking, I've been through a divorce, I've got this custody agreement, and it's just not working for me anymore. Those people need to give us a call. We're happy to look at your situation. And, you know, I consult with a lot of people that will come in, we'll go over their situation, and the determination is you don't need to do anything right now. And so I've just met with them, and we're not going to start a case, and we're not going to do anything, but they at least get to leave with that peace of mind of, I've at least I've dealt with the situation, and I know when to come back, and I've been given the toolbox of and the things to look for, and that if those things do happen, then I can go back, and I've already got that attorney lined up so that we can get the ball rolling if we need to.
Now that would be really important, just that they are properly prepared, even if they don't do something right away with you. And have you seen that where people come back, when they need to? And
People do come back, and I tell people, if you think that the divorce is looming, go find your divorce attorney now, because your spouse may go file first, and then you're going to get served. That starts deadlines, because once you get served, you have to file an answer within the prescribed period of time under the law. And so you don't want to spend that time period attorney hunting, because you're not going to find the attorney you really like. And so go meet with your attorney, find them, hopefully you'll never have to use them. But if you do, you're not worried about that step. You just can, once you get the paperwork, you know where you're going, you know what you're going to do.
That is awesome. Well, folks, today on the Business Spotlight, we're just talking about family law. Jeffrey Stewart with Galloway and Gilliland out of the Southlake area, serving the DFW area. They're doing some great work. He's a bit of a rising star. I hope if you need one, you'll call him soon. We'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks again.